Hey, 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 welcome back to this channel. Before you even think about skipping this video, let me ask you one thing. When was the last time you saw a K-pop artist who wasn't just popular, but who literally redefined what perfect means in the global music industry? Because today, we're not just talking about fandoms or chart positions. We're talking about numbers that don't lie. We're talking about the world's algorithm that has already delivered its verdict. And we're talking about one name that keeps coming up and coming up and coming up again. Park Jimin, BTS, and three keywords that have been spinning around in my head for weeks now. Perfect, go wild, break through. These aren't just cool-sounding phrases. They're not fandom jargon. These are the technical description of what Jimin has done to the global music industry. And today, we're going to break it all down completely. So make sure you've already hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and get yourself ready, because what we're covering today is going to blow your mind. Alright, if you've been following this channel for a while, you already know Park Jimin. But let me tell his story again, not the version you usually hear. The more raw version, the more real one. Jimin was born in Busan, South Korea. He entered Big Hit Entertainment as a trainee, and here's what's extraordinary. He only needed 6 months as a trainee before officially debuting with BTS on June 13, 2013. 6 months. In an industry where other trainees can spend 5, 7, even 10 years, Jimin walked in and immediately became part of the group that would go on to change the history of music worldwide. But this isn't about luck. This is about someone who was simply born for the stage. As BTS's main dancer, Jimin doesn't just dance. He tells stories through his body. Every movement carries meaning. Every expression carries soul. And that is what sets him apart from the thousands of other talented K-pop idols out there. Fans don't cry watching Jimin dance because his choreography is flawless. They cry because they feel something they cannot put into words. And after more than a decade with BTS, Jimin decided to prove something even bigger as a solo artist. Now let's get to the heart of what we're here to talk about. The first keyword, perfect. And I'm not using that word lightly. Because in the music world, there is one term that is deeply technical, incredibly prestigious, and extremely rare. It's called a perfect all-kill, or PK for short. What is a perfect all-kill? A perfect all-kill happens when a song simultaneously tops the real-time chart, the daily chart, and the weekly chart on iTunes across 119 countries at the same time. 119 countries. At the exact same moment. Now here's the question. How many artists in the world have ever achieved this? Very few. And among that very few, Jimin stands alone at the top. Because as of July 2024, Park Jimin is the only artist in the entire history of the iTunes Worldwide Song Chart to achieve 5 perfect all-kills. 5. Not 1. Not 2. 5 perfect all-kills. The songs, like Crazy, With You, Filter, Closer Than This, and Smeraldo Garden Marching Band featuring Loco. 5 songs. 5 times Jimin dominated 119 countries simultaneously. And this isn't just about a rabidly loyal fandom. This is about algorithms. This is about streaming numbers. This is about real data recorded by global platforms. But wait, Jimin's perfect doesn't stop there. Let's talk about his solo albums. His debut album, Face, was released in March 2023. And like Crazy, the lead single from that album, debuted at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, making Jimin the first Korean solo artist to debut at the very top of the Hot 100. Not the first K-pop act, not the first Asian, the first in history. And then the album Muse, released in July 2024? Even more insane. Muse hit #1 on the iTunes Top Albums chart in 87 countries upon release. Within just the first 10 hours, it was already leading in 63 countries. It also made Jimin the first and only K-pop act in 2024 to hit #1 on the UK iTunes album chart. Still not enough? Who? The title track of Muse topped the iTunes chart in 112 countries simultaneously. And Muse itself rose to #1 on the Billboard Global 200 for 2 consecutive weeks, a first for Jimin as a solo artist. And keep in mind, all of this happened while Jimin was serving mandatory military service. No promotions, no live performances, no variety shows, no press conferences, just his music, speaking for itself, to the entire world. That is what perfect means in the context of Jimin of BTS. The second keyword, Go Wild. And this is honestly my favorite part of Jimin's story. Because there is something you need to understand about the K-pop industry, especially when it comes to group members who try going solo. Many try, not all succeed. When a member from a major group attempts a solo career, the world is always skeptical. They only succeeded because of the group, people say. The fandom will buy anything they release, the critics write. But look at what happened with Jimin. Jimin didn't just put out solo music that was good enough for an idol. He shook the entire industry. Like Crazy wasn't just #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. It became the first ever Korean solo song to debut at the top of the Hot 100 in the chart's 65-year history. 65 years. Jimin cracked it open. And then, while the world was still processing that, Jimin went wild with even more records. He became the first K-pop artist to surpass 1 billion streams on Spotify in a single calendar year, in 2023. Like Crazy became the fastest song by a Korean solo artist to reach 100 million streams on Spotify in just 10 days. Face became the first K-pop solo album to surpass 1 billion streams on Spotify. For 7 consecutive years, 2019 to 2025, Jimin was crowned Best Male Dancer in K-pop by Dabeam Pop in worldwide fan polls, a level of consistency that is simply unmatched. He has collected a total of 20 awards related to dance artistry, a record that is almost unbelievable. And when we talk about Go Wild, we absolutely have to talk about Dior. In January 2023, Dior announced Jimin as their global ambassador. This wasn't just a regular endorsement deal. This was one of the most prestigious fashion houses in the world declaring that Jimin isn't just an idol. He is a global cultural icon. And when Jimin appeared in Dior on various occasions, it wasn't just Dior's sales that exploded. The entire conversation around Asian men in the luxury fashion world changed forever. That is Go Wild, Jimin style. Not just daring, but rewriting the definition of what's possible. The third keyword, breakthrough. And this is the most emotional part of the story. December 2023. Jimin enlisted for mandatory military service in South Korea. He was one of the last BTS members to enlist. And for many ARMY, that moment felt heavy. Not because they didn't support it. ARMY fully supported it. But because waiting is the hardest part of loving something. But what happened while Jimin was serving his military duty? His music never went silent. Even with no promotions, no interviews, no performances. The charts kept moving. The streams kept flowing. The records kept falling. And then, June 11th, 2025, together with Jungkook, Jimin officially completed his military service. In front of a massive crowd of ARMY gathered outside the base, Jimin and Jungkook saluted, and the world watched. HYBE stock dipped 2.7% that day amid investor euphoria. But that's beside the point. What mattered was, Jimin was back. And the real breakthrough was just beginning. Just weeks after his discharge, in July 2025, all 7 members of BTS reunited for the first time since 2022. They went straight into recording sessions. Then, during a Weverse livestream on November 1st, 2025, it was Jimin who first announced to the world, "Guys, we just finished recording. The album can come out next spring. Seeing you today, I really feel like promoting our music." A simple sentence. But ARMY around the entire world cried reading it. And that spring came. March 20th, 2026, BTS released Erarang. This 5th studio album wasn't just a regular comeback. It was the biggest music event of 2026. The album debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 with 641,000 album equivalent units in its first week, the largest first-week total by any group since Billboard began tracking units in late 2014. 641,000 units in 1 week. Produced alongside massive names like Diplo, Flume, Kevin Parker of Tame Impala, Mike Will Made It, and Ryan Tedder. Erarang was a declaration that BTS, and Jimin within it, had reached a level where they no longer need to compare themselves to anyone. And Jimin himself contributed to writing They Don't Know About Us and Into the Sun, 2 songs that critics called the emotional heart of the entire album. The Hollywood Reporter wrote that Into the Sun proved that BTS are never one to shy away from standing in the spotlight they worked hard to earn, and that the group now exists in a space outside the limitations many have set upon them. Outside the limitations others set for them. That is breakthrough. Jimin, that is going to make your jaw drop. Save this. Screenshot it. Share it with anyone who still says, "Oh, it's just the fandom making noise." On iTunes, Jimin is the only artist in the world with 5 perfect all kills on the iTunes Worldwide Song Chart. Both Face and Muse have topped the iTunes Top Albums chart in 100+ countries, making him the first artist to have 2 albums achieve this. He is also the only K-pop artist with 6 songs achieving an all-kill on the iTunes Worldwide Song Chart as of 2026. On Billboard, he is the first Korean solo artist to debut at #1 on the Hot 100 with Like Crazy. Muse held the #1 spot on the Billboard Global 200 for 2 consecutive weeks. He contributed to Erarang, which debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 with 641,000 units. On Spotify, he is the first K-pop artist to surpass 1 billion streams in a single calendar year, 2023. Face was the first K-pop solo album to surpass 1 billion total streams. Like Crazy was the fastest song by a Korean solo artist to reach 100 million streams in 10 days. In dance and performance, Best Male Dancer in K-pop for 7 consecutive years, 2019 to 2025, according to Domination Pop. A total of 20 awards related to dance artistry. Winner of the Best Main Dancer Award at the 2022 Melon Music Awards. In broader recognition, Global Ambassador for Dior since January 2023. Listed in the Guinness World Records for multiple streaming milestones, 2023 to 2024. Winner of Best International Album of the Year 2025 for Muse. Nominated for MTV VMA 2025 Best K-Pop for Who. Recognized by Rolling Stone, Time, Billboard, and Variety as a leading figure in the next wave of global pop. But you know what's the most extraordinary thing about all of this? The numbers are impressive, but numbers aren't the real reason Jimin is considered on another level. The real reason is this. Jimin consistently creates unforgettable moments, not just recordable achievements. When he replied to fan messages on Weverse before his military discharge in April 2025, he shared that every night before falling asleep, he thought about how much he wanted to perform again, to see ARMY, to grow his hair out, to wear perfume again, small, deeply human things. And ARMY all over the world cried reading it. Not because he won a chart battle, but because Jimin is the most human artist among all the biggest stars in the world. And that is what makes his connection with his fans completely unmatched. When he's on stage, he gives 100% of himself. Not 90%, not some manufactured 110%, but a genuine, honest 100%. And the audience can feel it. And the moment he and Jungkook saluted at their military discharge, in front of thousands of ARMY who had waited, that was one of the images that will be remembered in the history of K-pop. It wasn't scripted. It was real. So everyone, what a journey we've been on today. From perfect, 5 unmatched perfect all kills, Billboard records, Spotify records, to Go Wild, the audacity to become a solo artist who shattered every limitation others had built, to break through, returning from mandatory military service, coming back to a world that had been waiting, and immediately co-creating Erarang as one of the greatest albums in history. The algorithm doesn't lie, everyone. Numbers have no bias. Charts have no hidden agenda. Streams cannot be purchased with loyalty alone. And the data from every corner of the world has spoken clearly. Park Jimin is simply on another level. Not because we say so, but because the world has confirmed it. Repeatedly, across every platform, in every country, in every language. And the best part? This journey is far from over. With Erarang freshly released, with the BTS World Tour currently underway, and with Jimin now at the absolute peak of his energy, I truly believe we haven't even seen the real ceiling of what Park Jimin can achieve. Alright, before I close out this video, drop your comments below. Which Jimin record shocked you the most? I genuinely want to know. Don't forget to like this video if you agree that Jimin is simply on another level. And share it with anyone who still needs convincing. If you haven't subscribed yet, the button is right down there, and I promise the content coming next is going to be just as wild. Until next time, ARMY, stay golden, stay purple, Purple Heart.